Saturday mornings in the 70s were different. We grabbed our cereal, settled in front of the television, and watched cartoons that would make network executives today break out in cold sweats. Nobody questioned what we were seeing. It was just entertainment, just cartoons, just harmless fun on a weekend morning. But times have changed, and what seemed perfectly normal back then looks very different through modern eyes. Cultural standards have shifted, our understanding of representation has evolved, and the content that once filled our Saturday mornings now serves as a reminder of how far we've come. Here are 10 cartoons from the 1970s that would be banned today. Number 10, Hong Kong Phooey. Hong Kong Phooey premiered on ABC in September 1974, bringing audiences the adventures of Penrod Pooch, a mild-mannered police station janitor who transformed into a martial arts superhero. Hanna-Barbera created the show to capitalize on the kung fu craze, sweeping America thanks to Bruce Lee films and the television series Kung Fu starring David Carradine. Scatman Crothers voiced the title character, bringing his considerable talent to a show that ran for exactly 16 episodes before going into endless syndication. The concept itself raises eyebrows today. Hong Kong Phooey learned his martial arts skills from reading the Hong Kong Book of Kung Fu, a mail-order instruction manual he consulted before each adventure. The character drove around in a vehicle called the Phooey-mobile, which was designed as a pagoda on wheels, complete with Asian-inspired architectural features. Every episode featured the bumbling hero shouting "Hi-ya" while attempting karate moves that usually ended in disaster, with walls breaking apart around him or enemies accidentally defeating themselves while he flailed about ineffectively. His cat sidekick Spot actually solved the crimes through clever thinking and quick action, while Hong Kong Phooey took all the credit, completely oblivious to his own incompetence. This became the running joke of the series, with viewers in on the secret that the hero was actually useless. The police sergeant and telephone operator Rosemary praised Hong Kong Phooey as their savior, while Spot, unable to speak, could only shake his head at the misplaced adulation. The show relied heavily on stereotypical imagery and simplified concepts of Asian culture filtered through a very American lens. The title alone would raise immediate concerns in modern development meetings, with executives quickly pointing out the problematic nature of using Phooey in conjunction with reference to Hong Kong. Network censors today would flag the portrayal of martial arts as something learned from a book, rather than through proper training, discipline, and cultural understanding. The character design, the faux Asian phrases, and the overall treatment of Chinese culture as exotic window dressing all contributed to a show that reflected its era's casual approach to cultural sensitivity. Despite only producing 16 episodes, the show aired on all 3 major networks throughout the 70s and became a fixture of Saturday morning television for years. Its catchy theme song, sung by Crothers himself, became embedded in popular culture. But modern viewers watching these episodes can see clearly how the show reduced an entire culture to cartoon shorthand, treating Asian elements as funny props rather than meaningful aspects of a rich cultural heritage. Number 9, Apache Chief from Super Friends. The Super Friends expanded their roster in 1977 when the all-new Super Friends Hour premiered. The producers at Hanna-Barbera decided to include more ethnically diverse characters after facing criticism about the all-white lineup. Apache Chief joined the team alongside Black Vulcan, Samurai, and El Dorado. These characters were created specifically for television rather than adapted from DC Comics, giving Hanna-Barbera complete control over their development. The intentions were good, representing a genuine attempt to address diversity concerns, but the execution created characters that today would never make it past the concept stage. Apache Chief grew to enormous size by shouting "Inuk Chuck," supposedly meaning "big man" in Apache language. Except the phrase was completely fabricated and had no basis in any actual Native American language. The character wore a feathered headdress as his costume, spoke in stilted, broken English with halting speech patterns, and spouted vague Native American philosophy about nature and harmony. His origin story, revealed in the Challenge of the Super Friends episode History of Doom, involved receiving magic powder from a tribal medicine man during an encounter with a grizzly bear, leaning heavily into the magical Native American trope that has been extensively criticized in modern media analysis. Michael Rye provided Apache Chief's voice through most of the character's appearances on Challenge of the Super Friends, which aired during the 1978 to 1979 season. The character appeared in nearly every episode of that legendary season, featuring the Legion of Doom, but he had speaking lines in only about half of them. When he did speak, it was often just to shout his magic words or deliver simple statements in broken English. His archenemy was Giganta, who gained her own size-changing powers by stealing some of the same magic powder during Apache Chief's origin, creating a villain whose entire existence tied back to the hero's Native American mysticism. The entire setup reduced Native American culture to mystical stereotypes and simplified imagery. The producers wanted to include a Native American hero, which was commendable, but they fell back on every stereotype available rather than consulting with actual Native American people or cultural experts. Modern writers understand that Native American characters deserve the same depth, complexity, and cultural authenticity as any other representation. Apache Chief, despite being created with positive intentions of inclusion, embodied exactly the kind of token representation that today's standards actively work to avoid. Networks now employ cultural consultants and sensitivity readers to prevent this type of stereotypical characterization from reaching audiences. Number 8. The Jackson 5-Ive. The Jackson 5-Ive premiered in September 1971 on ABC, bringing animated versions of Michael Jackson and his brothers to Saturday morning television during the height of their musical success. Rankin Dark Bass Productions created the show, the same studio behind beloved holiday specials like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. The series ran for 2 seasons with 23 episodes total, airing until 1973. The real Jackson 5 were riding high on the charts with massive hits like ABC, I Want You Back, and I'll Be There, making them perfect candidates for the cartoon treatment that successful musicians often receive during that era. The show featured the brothers solving mysteries and getting into adventures between their musical performances, following a format similar to other music-based cartoons of the period. Each episode included original songs and elaborate musical sequences showcasing the brothers' talents. The Jackson 5 themselves voiced their animated counterparts in the first season, with professional voice actors taking over those roles in the second season when the brothers' touring and recording schedule became too demanding. What makes this show deeply problematic today goes far beyond the content of the episodes themselves. Michael Jackson's later life and the serious allegations of child abuse against him have retroactively cast a long, dark shadow over any celebration of his earlier work. Networks today would struggle immensely with promoting a show featuring someone whose legacy includes such disturbing and credible accusations. The show presents an innocent, family-friendly version of the Jackson brothers that clashes dramatically and disturbingly with what we later learned about Michael's troubled life and the multiple allegations of abuse involving children. Additionally, from a representation standpoint, the show presented a sanitized, commercialized version of Black entertainment specifically designed for mainstream white audiences. While the series was groundbreaking for featuring Black characters in starring roles on Saturday morning television, the show smoothed away any rough edges, real cultural specificity, or authentic Black expression in favor of broad appeal that wouldn't challenge white viewers. Modern standards demand more authentic representation that doesn't require minorities to make themselves palatable, diluted, or unthreatening to achieve mainstream success and network approval. Number 7. Wait Till Your Father Gets Home. Hanna-Barbera produced this primetime animated series from 1972 to 1974, creating what many considered the precursor to shows like The Simpsons. The show aired in syndication and focused on the Boyle family, particularly conservative father Harry Boyle dealing with his liberal children and the changing social landscape of early 70s America. The show tackled topics like women's liberation, the generation gap, drugs, and the sexual revolution. Harry Boyle represented the traditional, old-fashioned viewpoint, while his children embodied the counterculture. His wife Irma was the stereotypical suburban housewife. The humor came from Harry's reactions to modern changes and his children's progressive attitudes. The character designs and humor relied heavily on generational stereotypes. Every episode positioned traditional values against modern thinking, with Harry usually learning a grudging lesson. The portrayal of women was particularly dated, with Irma existing primarily as Harry's wife, rather than as a fully developed character. The show's treatment of social issues, while attempting to be relevant, often fell back on easy jokes about hippies, women's rights, and youth culture. Tom Bosley provided Harry's voice, bringing the same gruff but lovable energy he'd later use as Mr. Cunningham on Happy Days. The show was progressive for its time in attempting to address real social issues in animated form, but modern audiences would find its gender roles and stereotypical characterizations uncomfortable at best. Number 6. The Harlem Globetrotters. CBS brought the famous basketball team to Saturday morning television in September 1970. Hanna-Barbera produced the show, which ran for 2 seasons with 22 episodes. The animated Globetrotters traveled around solving mysteries and helping people, always finding time to play basketball and showcase their trademark tricks and humor. The real Harlem Globetrotters provided voices for their animated counterparts. Scatman Crothers voiced the character based on Meadowlark Lemon. Each episode followed the team encountering some problem or villain, solving it through teamwork and basketball skills, usually ending with a game where they performed their famous routines. The show reduced the groundbreaking black basketball team to cartoon characters who primarily existed for entertainment of white audiences. While the Globetrotters participated in creating the show and voiced themselves, the format placed them in the role of magical helpers who showed up to solve problems and then moved on. The characters spoke in exaggerated slang, and their personalities leaned heavily on entertainment value rather than authentic characterization. Modern standards would demand more depth and less reliance on the Globetrotters as performers for outside audiences. The show was progressive for giving black characters starring roles in 1970, but the execution treated the team members more as archetypes than fully realized individuals. The theme song itself emphasized the team's entertainment value over their athletic achievements or personal stories. Number 5. Josie and the Pussycats in Outer Space. This 1972 series took the characters from Josie and the Pussycats and sent them on a wild science fiction adventure. Hanna-Barbera produced 16 episodes that aired on CBS. The band, their roadie, and their manager got accidentally launched into space and spent the season trying to get back to Earth while encountering aliens and having adventures. The show continued featuring Alexandra Cabot as the villain who constantly schemed against Josie and the band. Alexandra's character relied on female rivalry stereotypes, portraying her as vain, jealous, and willing to sabotage other women. The show's treatment of the female characters fell into familiar patterns of the era, with the girls defined largely by their relationships to the boys and their roles in the band. Valerie, the black member of the band, remained in the background for most episodes despite being a core character. Her characterization was minimal, and she often served as the voice of reason without getting much individual development. The show's approach to space adventures involved the band members wearing their regular outfits in alien environments, maintaining their roles as performers first and characters second. The show's entire premise was built on the idea of young women needing to be rescued or finding their way home, rather than embracing adventure for its own sake. Modern animated shows featuring female leads give them agency and complex motivations beyond getting back to their normal lives. The Pussycats were talented musicians, but the show rarely let that talent drive the plot in meaningful ways. Number 4. Help. It's the Hair Bear Bunch. This 1971 Hanna-Barbera series lasted one season with 16 episodes on CBS. Three bears living in a zoo spent their time outsmarting the zookeeper, Mr. Peevely, and his assistant, Botch. The bears had secretly renovated their cave into a luxury pad complete with modern conveniences, and most episodes involved hiding this from the humans. The humor relied heavily on the stupid authority figure trope. Mr. Peevely and Botch were portrayed as bumbling idiots who could never quite catch on to what the bears were doing, even when the evidence was right in front of them. The bears consistently made fools of the humans, escaping the zoo to have adventures and always returning before getting caught. The treatment of authority figures as inherently stupid and worthy of mockery would raise concerns today. Children's programming now generally shows more respect for adults and authority while still allowing for comedy. The show's entire premise was built around rule-breaking and deception, with the heroes lying to and manipulating the humans in charge of their care. Additionally, the show promoted the idea that zoo animals would be happier with human luxuries than in natural habitats, sending a questionable message about animal welfare. Modern children's programming tends to emphasize conservation, proper animal care, and respect for wildlife rather than depicting captive animals living in secret luxury apartments. Number 3. The Amazing Chan and the Chan Clan. Hanna-Barbera brought Charlie Chan to Saturday morning television in September 1972, creating a show that would run through 1974. The series featured the famous detective and his 10 children solving mysteries while traveling around in a van, following the mystery-solving formula that had proven so successful with Scooby-Doo. The series ran for one season, with 16 episodes on CBS, airing as part of the network's Saturday morning lineup. Key Luke, who had played Charlie Chan's son in the original film series during the 1930s and 1940s, provided the voice for the animated Charlie Chan, bringing decades of experience with the character to the role. Charlie Chan himself was a problematic character from his very origins in the 1920s. Created by white author Earl Dare Biggers, the character perpetuated Asian stereotypes even while being presented as intelligent, capable, and heroic. The animated version continued this troubling tradition, with Charlie Chan speaking in fortune cookie wisdom and broken English, despite supposedly being an educated detective. His children were given stereotypical names and personalities, reduced to simple character types rather than fully developed individuals. The entire family existed primarily to solve mysteries for others, serving the needs of the plot rather than being portrayed as real people with their own lives and motivations. The show was essentially Scooby-Doo with an Asian family replacing the multiracial gang of teenagers, but the cultural elements were treated as exotic flavor rather than authentic representation. The children had a dog named Choo Choo, drove a van similar to the Mystery Machine, and encountered spooky mysteries each week, hitting all the familiar beats of the Scooby formula while adding Asian cultural elements as mere window dressing. The mysteries followed predictable patterns, the villains were always unmasked at the end, and the family dynamic served the mystery-solving format rather than exploring what it actually meant to be an Asian American family in the 1970s. The show attempted to capitalize on the popularity of both mystery cartoons and the kung fu craze of the early 70s, but it did so by reducing Chinese culture to stereotypes and catchphrases. Charlie Chan's aphorisms and proverbs became running jokes rather than genuine wisdom. The show never engaged with real Asian American experiences or challenges, instead creating a sanitized, stereotypical version of Asian culture that white audiences could consume without discomfort. Modern understanding recognizes Charlie Chan as a character that, regardless of good intentions, contributed to limiting and harmful stereotypes about Asian people. The character was created by a white writer and performed by white actors in yellowface makeup in the original films, with only a few exceptions like Key Luke, who played supporting roles. The animated version tried to be more respectful by casting an Asian actor in the lead role, but the fundamental issues with the character remained deeply embedded in his conception. Contemporary networks would not greenlight a show based on this property without completely reimagining it from the ground up, consulting with Asian American writers and cultural experts, and fundamentally rethinking what the character represents. Number 2. Goober and the Ghostchasers. Hanna-Barbera produced this show in 1973, creating another entry in their extensive collection of Scooby-Doo-inspired series that flooded Saturday morning television throughout the decade. The show featured a dog named Goober, who could become invisible at will, a magazine called Ghostchasers, run by teenagers, and a group of young investigators solving supernatural mysteries across the country. 16 episodes aired on ABC over one season before the show disappeared into the vault of forgotten Hanna-Barbera productions. The show featured a character named Ted, who served as the magazine's photographer and was consistently portrayed as cowardly, clumsy, and incompetent. But more problematically, Ted was depicted as overweight, and the jokes about his weight, his eating habits, and his fearfulness would absolutely not fly in modern programming. Children's shows today work actively to avoid body shaming and mockery of people's physical appearances, recognizing the lasting harm such portrayals can cause to young viewers who might see themselves reflected in these negative stereotypes. Ted's character existed primarily to be the butt of jokes about his size, his tendency to panic at the first sign of danger, and his general uselessness to the team. Every episode reinforced the idea that being overweight made someone less capable, less brave, and less worthy of respect. The other characters weren't particularly well developed either. The show featured Jilly, Ted's sister who worked as a reporter, Tina, the photographer's assistant, and Corky, who served as the group's mechanic. None of them had much personality beyond their basic job descriptions. Goober himself, despite being able to turn invisible, wasn't particularly memorable or charming compared to Scooby-Doo, the character he was clearly meant to replace in viewers' affections. Additionally, the show's portrayal of ghost hunting and the supernatural would face considerable scrutiny today. Networks are much more careful now about how they present paranormal content to children, being mindful of scaring younger viewers or promoting beliefs in ghosts and supernatural phenomena without appropriate context or framing. The show treated ghosts and hauntings as real possibilities rather than mysteries to be solved with rational explanations, which some parents and educators would find concerning for impressionable young audiences. The show was formulaic even by the standards of its day, following the Scooby-Doo template almost exactly, but without the charm, humor, or memorable characters that made the original work so well. Each episode followed the same pattern. The gang would arrive somewhere, encounter a ghost or monster, investigate while Ted panicked and ate. Goober would use his invisibility at a crucial moment, and they'd expose the villain who was inevitably someone they'd met earlier in the episode. Modern audiences expect more originality, better character development, and less reliance on tired formulas, especially in shows aimed at children who deserve quality programming that respects their intelligence and doesn't recycle the same tired plots week after week. Number 1. Inch High, Private Eye. Hanna-Barbera created this 1973 series about a tiny detective who was literally 1 inch tall, navigating a world built for normal-sized people. Inch High, whose real name was Finkerton, worked alongside his niece Lori and her muscle-bound boyfriend Gator to solve mysteries while dealing with the unique challenges of being 1 inch tall in a regular-sized world. The show ran for one season, with 13 episodes on NBC before disappearing from the airwaves. The character of Inch High himself raised serious issues around disability representation that would be immediately flagged today. His tiny size was played entirely for comedy, with the character constantly getting into dangerous situations and narrow escapes because of his height. He'd get stepped on, blown away by wind, attacked by regular-sized insects and animals, and face countless perils that were presented as funny rather than genuinely dangerous. Modern sensitivity around depicting people with physical differences would require much more thoughtful treatment of a character whose defining feature is his unusual size. Today's standards recognize that using someone's physical difference as the primary source of comedy can be hurtful and marginalizing, reinforcing the idea that people who look different are objects of amusement rather than fully realized human beings. The character of Gator, Laurie's boyfriend, was portrayed as strong but simple-minded, speaking in a slow, deliberate manner and often missing obvious clues that Inch High and Laurie picked up immediately. The big dumb guy stereotype appeared frequently in 70s cartoons, reducing muscular male characters to one-dimensional strongmen without intelligence or depth. Modern programming recognizes this as an unfair and limiting portrayal that does a disservice to viewers. Characters who are physically strong can also be intelligent, thoughtful, and complex, and the two traits shouldn't be presented as mutually exclusive. This stereotype also sends problematic messages to children about what different body types supposedly indicate about a person's mental capabilities. The show's treatment of danger and risk would also concern modern broadcasters considerably. Inch High regularly found himself in genuinely life-threatening situations that were played entirely for laughs. He'd be nearly crushed, almost drowned, threatened by household pets, and endangered by everyday objects that posed no threat to normal-sized people. The show never acknowledged the serious risks involved, or showed appropriate concern for his safety. Networks today are much more careful about depicting scenarios where characters, especially small or child-sized characters, face serious danger without appropriate acknowledgement of the risks involved or without showing realistic consequences. The mysteries themselves were fairly standard fare, with Inch High using his small size to gather clues by going places normal-sized detectives couldn't reach. But the show never really explored the emotional or psychological aspects of being 1 inch tall in a world built for people 72 times your height. It was all played for laughs without any genuine consideration of what such an existence would actually mean for someone. Modern children's programming understands that even in fantastical scenarios, characters should have emotional depth and face real consequences, making the content more meaningful and relatable for young viewers. If this trip down memory lane brought back some thoughts about how times have changed, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe for more looks at the entertainment that shaped our generation. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.